What's going on, everyone? Welcome on into a mailbag edition of the Broncos Breakdown. I'm answering questions that came in during our live show, which airs every single Tuesday at 3 p.m. Mountain Time. So if you want to be a part of the next live show, tune in then to ask your question. Make sure that share button down below and send it to a friend or a family member that loves the Broncos as much as you do. First question coming in from Levi Johnson. Would we trade up for Will Johnson? Levi, I would love to say yes, but they don't need another corner. They've got three great corners. They got three good, great, quality starting corners. And Pat Surtain, who's really, doing the legwork for it to be in a great corner room. But, Riley Moss is no schmuck either. And McMillan on the inside was terrific the last two seasons. So I think Will Johnson is going to be a star. I don't think he's going to be as good as PS2. But I do believe he is going to be a franchise legend for a team, and that's a lot for someone to say, but I think that highly of him. So if they end up drafting Will Johnson, I won't be upset because I think he's going to be that good at the next level. But I think that the overall roster would be better if they added to the tight end or running back department and just left the corners as is, since they're all under contract and they're all doing a great job. Mr. Weekly, who should the Broncos pick up during free agency, but the player can only be a special teamer? It's tough because they don't need a kicker. Will Lutz was awesome last year. They don't need a return man. So now you're looking for like a core special teamer. The Jets had one for a while. I'm blanking on his name. Hardy? Justin Hardy? Is that it? I think so. Yeah, Justin Hardy. He was only on practice teams last year, but he's like the best core special teamer that's probably available. So that's the best I can give you, other than there's going to be some great linebacker who they signed for special teams and ends up being better on defense. That was the case with Alex Singleton, and that was the case with Zach Bond in Philadelphia. Nick, do you think Davante Adams signing with the Broncos? I don't think Davante Adams wants to come to Denver, and I don't think the Broncos probably want Davante Adams to the point where they will get into a little bit of a bidding war with some other teams. Would every team like to have Davante Adams? Yeah, sure. Right? Would every team like to have Davante Adams for what he's going to get on the open market? Probably not. And I think Denver will just sit this one out and not spend a ton for a player who I don't think would even come to the Broncos, to be honest with you. The Lord of Liberty. Do you like Walter Nolensville as much as I do? We talking about the Ole Miss defensive tackle? Okay, I think we are. I don't know where the Ville got added unless it's a nickname I'm just unaware of. But yeah, I do. I mean, the guy's got really good pass rush upside. He had 5 sacks last year for the Rebels, and he weighs nearly 300 pounds. Last year's defensive tackle class, I think I could count on one hand how many defensive linemen weighed over 300 pounds. This year, it's one of the best interior defensive lineman classes we've seen in recent history. So I'm very much in on Walter Nolen. My preference goes Ashton Genty, Tyler Warren, Colston Loveland, then Walter Nolen at number 4. Bro Nix, could the Broncos trade for Michael Mayer? That's the Raiders tight end, second-round pick out of Notre Dame, who has just been shelved. Like, you've got Brock Bowers ahead of him on the depth chart, and I don't think Michael Mayer was so good to the point where it warranted skipping out on him altogether because you had, or skipping out on Bowers altogether because you had Mayer. Because look how awesome Brock was his first year for Las Vegas. But it definitely appears like a trade is brewing for the former second-round pick. Last year, he missed a lot of time for personal reasons, and I don't know if we ever really found out exactly what it was. But he ended the year with just 21 grabs, 156 yards, and a really bad Raiders offense outside of Brock Bowers. So I could see Denver being interested in trading for a tight end. Are we going to see an interdivision trade? You're probably thinking absolutely not. TJ Hawkinson was traded from the Lions to the Vikings. This is not going to be that big of a trade. I could see both teams going, hey, I know we play each other twice a year, but this is a win-win for us. Like, if you're the Raiders, we don't need him anymore. We've got Bowers. We want him to play every single snap. If you're the Broncos, you could look at that and go, hey, we'll take your trash because he could be our treasure. How does a 6th-round draft pick sound? Both sides go, yeah, we're happy to get something for him because otherwise he just sits on our bench. And sure, we have to play him twice a year, but I don't think they're that concerned about it if they're willing to trade him. Now, would you trade for the Raiders tight end? Give me a yes or a no in the comment section. I want to hear from everybody tuned in down below. Moving on to our next question, coming in from Timothy. There normally was 250 plus picks total in the NFL draft. I forget the exact number, but I honestly, those who weren't drafted are in a supplemental draft or just in free agency, right? They have not done a supplemental draft in a while. The supplemental draft, if you don't know, was a draft that was created for players who couldn't enter the NFL draft for one reason or another. I think the most famous supplemental draft pick would probably be Bernie Kosar. But the way it works is like those players who couldn't enter the draft for whatever reason, they go to the supplemental draft, which is in like August or September. And if a team wants to enter that supplemental draft and they want to use a first-round pick, then they don't get a first-round pick in the real draft. So teams have just stopped caring about the supplemental draft and they keep all their picks for the real draft. There was a player who was supplemental draft worthy and no team wanted to give up a draft pick for it. It was like 2 or 3 years ago and I can't remember who it was. But Timothy, if they don't get drafted, they're undrafted free agents. And a lot of times players prefer to be UDFAs instead of 7th-round draft picks because then they can sign with a team who maybe they have a better chance of making that roster because the competition at that position for them isn't as fierce as some other teams. Brittany, why can't free agency start sooner? Free agency starts legal tampering-wise 2 days before the new league year, which is always around the middle of March. I think the NFL likes the spacing of their offseason where they've got the combine, and then they give teams like 2 weeks after the combine to discuss trades. Not even 2 weeks, like a week and a half, to discuss any possible trades that they want to execute before the league year starts and not ram it all together. And trades never have time to materialize because teams all of a sudden are in free agency and they're signing players and they no longer have a need to trade for a player because they just signed someone at that same position. So that's probably the reason why this way trades have a little bit more, breathing time. Before we look at the other questions on today's show, make sure you visit chatsports.com/DEN hat to get this Broncos winter hat that is 70% off. It's under $10. I know right now it does not seem like a great time to stock up on your winter wardrobe, but if you're thinking of getting some more stuff in the fall in 6 or 7 months, this is going to run you about $35 to $40. You can do it right now for $10, under 10, and future you will love old you. So check it out. I put this link in the comments and description of today's video. Koner, would you rather trade for Pitts or Mayer? So, good question. Kyle Pitts is going to cost you more, but he's better. So, I would say Kyle Pitts. I think Mayer's probably going to run you about a 6th-round draft pick, and Pitts is probably going to run you about a 4th-round draft pick. I'm willing to move up 2 rounds in the draft for someone who was an absolute unicorn in college, and I don't have a great reason as to why it's not working in Atlanta, but I'm willing to bet that Sean Payton can make it work. And I'd much rather have that high-level potential with Pitts. So I'd roll the dice on a more expensive trade for Pitts with the higher ceiling. John Lopez, how is Loveland a first-round prospect when his numbers are worse than other tight ends? His championship year wasn't much more impressive. You say his numbers, like just purely his stats? Because you got to think he was in an offense that ran the ball on 1st, 2nd, and 3rd down. I don't think J.J. McCarthy ever had a game with over 25 passing attempts. He usually was right around like 15 to 20. So it wasn't like they had a whole bunch of opportunities to showcase their passing abilities and their receiving abilities when they ran it all the time. But for him to put up those numbers in an offense that threw the ball 17 to 18 times, I mean, you got to think, J.J. McCarthy, I think in the national championship game, completed like 12 passes. So sorry he didn't have good enough numbers for you when only 12 balls were 13 to 14 were even completed in the championship game. That's not a very good sample size or a very good, opportunity for him to make a name for himself. But when the ball did find him, he put up some really nice plays and some awesome tape. Red Hood, do you see the Broncos trading up in the draft? I'm going to say no. But I think if Genty and Warren go early, like both go top 10, let's say the Raiders take Genty and the Jets take Warren. Now Denver may be sweating it if Colston Loveland, who may be third on their wish list, is going to fall from 8 to 20. And they may be panicked that someone behind them or even in front of them could take Loveland. So I think in order for a trade up to happen, you'd have to see Genty and Tyler Warren both go top 10, which could happen. Some mock drafts have that happening. Some mock drafts have Genty going all the way to 20. I'm excited for this draft because I feel like in previous drafts, like you go back to last year, we knew the first 3 picks. We tried to, spice it up with, maybe they won't go with Jaden Daniels. Maybe the Patriots are going to trade the 3rd overall pick. When in reality, the draft didn't really start till number 5 because we knew it was going to go Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and Marvin Harrison. The Chargers were the first unknown. This year, we don't even know which team is going to be picking 1st overall, let alone which player. So I'm going to say no if you had to pick one between yes or no, but that could change if those 2 guys go top 10. Jacob Smith, Brandon Marshall, or Demaryius Thomas? I go DT. Give me Demaryius Thomas. Brandon Marshall, I'll say sneaky good NFL career. That's not a hot take, but his name doesn't really come up often when talking about some of the really good receivers in that 2010s decade. The guy put up like 1,500 yards the second to last year of his career in the Jets offense. Marshall deserves a little bit more credit for his receiving abilities and just his career in general, but I'll go with Demaryius Thomas. Pippa's 2024. Why isn't anyone talking about starting? This is a troll. Moving along here. You mean maybe for another team? I mean, Zach Wilson and Jarrett Stidham are both not going to return. One of them is going to want to go out and find a competitive opportunity elsewhere to compete for a starting job. And maybe both do, but I don't think there's that many competitive openings that aren't going to be filled in the draft or with other free agent signings. So my guess is one's going to come back to Denver when they learn there's not really any greener grass out there. Fred, how many wins you predicting for this upcoming season? Good question, Fred. I'm going to go with give me 10-7. You're probably expecting me to say a bigger number. I think the sophomore slump is a real thing for quarterbacks. We kind of saw that with C.J. Stroud. No one would have told you that the Texans would have taken a step back this past season, which I think you could say they took a step back. But I'll go with 10-7 still. I just think that it's going to take one more offseason of draft picks and free agent signings for Sean Payton to really have all of his guys. And then those guys get another year of development. So give me 10-7 for 2025. That's going to do it for us on today's episode. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Make sure you scroll on down and subscribe if you enjoy free Broncos YouTube content. And I'll see everyone later.